Hello there, history friends. Welcome back to another riveting episode where we dive deep into the annals of financial history. Tonight's episode is about a financial disaster so big, it makes the housing crisis look like a dropped ice cream cone. Yes, we're talking about a catastrophe that shook the very foundations of the financial world. We're talking about the South Sea Bubble, the granddaddy of all market crashes. This wasn't just a minor hiccup, it was a full-scale economic earthquake that left no stone unturned. Buckle up. This wasn't just some boring economic blip. Imagine the wildest roller coaster ride you've ever been on, but instead of twists and turns, it's people's fortunes rising and plummeting in the blink of an eye. This was a full-blown frenzy that gripped England in 1720, turning everyday folks into overnight investors. People from all walks of life were caught up in the mania, from the wealthiest aristocrats to the humblest shopkeepers. Spoiler alert, it didn't end well. The bubble burst, leaving countless investors in financial ruin. Lives were shattered, and dreams were crushed as the harsh reality set in. Think of it like this: imagine everyone pouring their life savings into a company that promised to make them rich by catching unicorns. The promises were grandiose, the expectations sky high, but the reality was far from magical, except instead of unicorns, it was trading rights in the South Seas. The company claimed it would unlock untold wealth through exclusive trading privileges. But the truth was much murkier, and instead of magic, it was, well, mostly just lies. The South Sea Company was built on a foundation of deception, with promises that were too good to be true. Investors were lured in by the prospect of immense profits, only to find themselves ensnared in a web of falsehoods and deceit. At the height of the bubble, the atmosphere was electric. Lavish parties were thrown and fortunes were made overnight. It seemed like everyone was getting rich, and the excitement was palpable. Newspapers were filled with stories of incredible wealth, and the South Sea Company became the talk of the town. But beneath the surface, trouble was brewing. As more and more people invested, the company's stock prices soared to dizzying heights. But this meteoric rise was unsustainable, and the bubble was destined to burst. When the crash finally came, it was swift and brutal. Investors scrambled to sell their shares, but it was too late. The market collapsed, and the once celebrated South Sea Company was left in ruins. In the aftermath, there were investigations and trials, as people sought to understand how such a disaster could have happened. The South Sea Bubble remains a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked speculation and greed. So, the next time you hear about a can't-miss investment opportunity, remember the lessons of the South Sea Bubble. History has a way of repeating itself, and those who fail to learn from it are doomed to repeat its mistakes. Our story begins with the South Sea Company, founded in 1711. This company was established during a time when European nations were fervently exploring and exploiting new trade routes and colonies. The South Sea Company was no different, aiming to capitalize on the lucrative opportunities that lay across the Atlantic. Their big idea? To exploit trade with South America. The region was rich in resources and potential, and the company saw a golden opportunity to make immense profits by trading goods such as silver, gold, and other valuable commodities. Sounds exciting, right? Except one tiny problem: Spain pretty much controlled everything out there. The Spanish Empire had a tight grip on its colonies in South America, making it incredibly difficult for other nations to break into the market. But the South Sea Company had a plan so cunning you could put a monocle on it and call it Mr. Peanut. They weren't going to let a little thing like Spanish dominance stand in their way. Instead, they devised a strategy to work around it. They convinced the British government to give them a monopoly on trade in the region. This was no small feat, as it required significant political maneuvering and persuasion. The promise of vast wealth and economic benefits for Britain helped sway the decision in their favor. In return, the company would take on some of the national debt. This arrangement was seen as a win-win situation. The British government would get relief from its mounting debts, and the South Sea Company would gain exclusive rights to potentially lucrative trade routes. It was like offering to clean someone's house for $1 million. The deal seemed almost too good to be true, and in many ways, it was. The company promised to bring in vast amounts of wealth, which would, in turn, benefit the entire nation. Sure, you might not find $1 million, but hey, at least the house gets cleaned. The South Sea Company's ambitious plans and promises created a sense of optimism and excitement. People were eager to invest, hoping to reap the rewards of this grand venture. Little did they know, the reality would be far more complicated and tumultuous. Word got out. The South Sea Company was the ticket to riches. People couldn't throw their money at it fast enough. The stock price skyrocketed from £128 in January 1720 to over £1,000 by August. Everyone wanted in on the action: dukes, butchers, even Sir Isaac Newton himself. More on him later. It was pure stock market mania. People were buying shares with money they didn't even have, hoping to get rich quick and retire to the Bahamas. Spoiler alert. Most of them ended up retiring to their in-laws' spare room. Even geniuses can get caught up in the hype. Sir Isaac Newton, the guy who figured out gravity, also bought South Sea stock. And guess what? He lost his shirt. Over £20,000, which back then was enough to buy a small island. Afterward, Newton supposedly said, "I can calculate the motion of heavenly bodies but not the madness of people." He was a smart guy. Section 5, the bubble bursts, party's over, everyone loses money. By late 1720, reality set in. Turns out, trading with South America wasn't as lucrative as promised. Surprise! The stock price plummeted faster than a pigeon with indigestion. People panicked, selling their shares for pennies on the pound. Fortunes were wiped out overnight, investors were ruined. People resorted to desperate measures, selling their homes, fleeing the country, even allegedly resorting to cannibalism. Okay, that last one might be a slight exaggeration. It was a mess, a financial Chernobyl. Section 6, picking up the pieces, the aftermath. The bursting of the South Sea bubble sent shockwaves through England. The economy tanked, banks collapsed. People lost faith in the financial system. The government stepped in, trying to restore order and punish those responsible. Enter Robert Walpole, basically the British version of Alexander Hamilton. He helped stabilize the economy and prevent a total meltdown. He also made sure that some of the worst offenders, the directors of the South Sea Company, were held accountable. They were fined, their assets were seized, and some even ended up in prison. Justice, albeit delayed, was served. Section 7, Wall Street, meet your ancestor. The South Sea bubble may have happened centuries ago, but its legacy lives on. It was the world's first major stock market crash, a cautionary tale about the dangers of speculation and greed. Sound familiar? That's because the same patterns keep repeating throughout history. Tulip mania in the 1600s, the dot-com bubble in the 1990s, and yes, even the housing crisis of the 2000s. People get greedy, they throw money at bad ideas, and then everyone loses their shirts. It's the circle of financial life. Section 8, never trust a guy in a wig. Lessons from the bubble. So what can we learn from this financial fiasco? The South Sea bubble of the 18th century is a classic example of how irrational exuberance and speculative mania can lead to financial disaster. It serves as a cautionary tale for investors even today. First, beware of get-rich-quick schemes. The South Sea Company promised enormous profits, luring in investors with the allure of quick and easy wealth. People were so blinded by the potential for high returns that they ignored the underlying risks. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. This age-old wisdom holds true across centuries. The promise of high returns with little to no risk should always be met with skepticism. The South Sea bubble burst because the company's promises were built on shaky foundations. Second, don't invest in things you don't understand. Many investors in the South Sea Company had little to no understanding of what they were actually investing in. They were driven by the fear of missing out, rather than a solid understanding of the company's business model. Seriously, if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you probably shouldn't be investing in it. This principle is crucial. If an investment is too complex to be easily understood, it's likely too risky for the average investor. And finally, remember that markets are driven by fear and greed. The South Sea bubble is a perfect illustration of this. When the stock prices were soaring, greed took over, and everyone wanted a piece of the action. But when the bubble burst, fear set in, leading to a massive sell-off. When everyone is euphoric, it's probably time to be cautious. The euphoria that drives stock prices to unsustainable levels is often a precursor to a market correction. Savvy investors know to be wary when everyone else is overly optimistic. And when everyone is panicking, well, that's when the real money is made. Market downturns can present buying opportunities for those who are prepared and have the courage to invest when others are fearful. Just kidding. Don't take financial advice from a comedy writer. But seriously, the lessons from the South Sea bubble are timeless. By understanding the past, we can make better financial decisions in the future. Section 9. Human nature, still pretty dumb. The South Sea Bubble is a reminder that human nature doesn't change. We're still susceptible to the same irrational exuberance, the same herd mentality that led to this financial disaster centuries ago. So next time you're thinking of investing in a sure thing, remember the South Sea Bubble. And maybe invest in something sensible instead, like index funds or, a nice sturdy mattress. At least you can sleep on that if things go south.